The universe, in its infinite wisdom and apparent sense of humor, had spent approximately 13 billion years crafting rules. Gravity pulls things together. Light has a speed limit. Black holes devour everything stupid enough to wander too close. Simple stuff, really. The kind of fundamental laws that every spacefaring civilization learns before they figure out faster than light travel, usually right after the unfortunate incident with their first prototype and someone's favorite moon. The Galactic Council's Deep Space Monitoring Network had been operating for 6,000 standard cycles without incident. Well, without major incident. There was that business with the Hectarian merchant fleet deciding to use a pulsar as a navigation beacon. But that had resolved itself in the way most problems involving pulsars resolve themselves, quickly and with spectacular radiation poisoning. The network consisted of approximately 40,000 autonomous monitoring stations scattered throughout the galaxy, each one a masterpiece of cooperative engineering. The Vexnari provided the sensors, capable of detecting a ship's engine signature from 3 light-years away. The Althean Collective contributed the processing cores, quantum-entangled computing arrays that could analyze 1 million data streams simultaneously. The Barathian Dominion supplied the power systems, fusion cores that would run for centuries without maintenance. Together, they formed an invisible web of surveillance that ensured the Council knew about every vessel, every trajectory, every potential disaster before it became a historical footnote and a cautionary tale in flight academies. Station Omega 779 had been monitoring the Omega Void for 900 cycles. The Omega Void was what the Council called it in official documentation. Most species called it the Devourer. Some called it the end of all journeys. The Hectarians, who were prone to dramatic naming conventions, called it the screaming mouth of eternal consumption, though that had been shortened to just screaming mouth for convenience during council sessions. It was a black hole, not just any black hole. This particular monster had the mass of 4 million suns compressed into a singularity, surrounded by an accretion disk that glowed with the fury of 1 billion dying stars. The event horizon stretched for hundreds of millions of kilometers, a sphere of uncertain finality where physics gave up pretending to be reasonable. Nothing escaped, nothing survived. The Omega Void had consumed 347 ships over the past millennium, mostly vessels with failing navigation systems or crews suffering from terminal stupidity. On the morning of Day 7, Hour 13, Cycle 990-47, Station Omega 779 detected something that made its Althean processing cores experience what could only be described as digital confusion. A ship, approaching the Omega Void. Deliberately, the station ran its diagnostics 3 times, certain that 6 centuries of perfect operation had finally yielded a sensor malfunction. But no, the signature was clear. A small vessel, barely 100 meters long, moving at 0.7 light speed directly toward the event horizon. The engine signature was unmistakable, human. The station transmitted its findings to the Council's Central Intelligence Hub on Nexus Prime. Within 6 standard minutes, the transmission had been escalated through 4 levels of bureaucracy, each reviewer more baffled than the last. Within 20 minutes, emergency session protocols had been activated. Within an hour, representatives from 47 species had materialized in the council chamber, their holographic forms flickering with various shades of confusion and concern. The Vexnari delegation arrived first, their crystalline bodies refracting the chamber's ambient light into nervous patterns. They were followed by the Altheans, floating spheres of bioelectric energy that pulsed with rapid-fire thought. The Barathians lumbered in next, their massive frames making the holographic projectors work overtime to maintain scale. One by one, the galaxy's finest minds assembled to witness what their instruments insisted was happening, but their understanding of physics insisted was impossible. The central display activated, showing real-time data from Station Omega 779. The human vessel appeared as a small green marker against the swirling orange-red visualization of the accretion disk. Telemetry data scrolled along the sides: velocity, trajectory, estimated time to event horizon. Explain this. The Vexnari Prime representative's voice chimed like breaking glass. Our sensors indicate the vessel is accelerating toward the Omega Void. The Althean coordinator's response came as a harmonic frequency, that translated through the chamber's universal communicators. We have confirmed the reading 7 times. The vessel is definitely human. Small crew, possibly single occupant. Engine signatures match Earth standard fusion drives, with some modifications. Navigation malfunction, suggested the Baratheon defense minister, his deep rumble, making the holographic projectors vibrate. Negative. An Althean technician materialized beside the main display. The vessel has made 14 course corrections in the past 3 hours. Each correction has optimized its trajectory toward the event horizon. This is deliberate. The chamber fell silent. 47 species representing the accumulated wisdom of 6,000 years of galactic cooperation stared at the display with the collective expression of people watching someone juggle chainsaws while riding a unicycle across a tightrope suspended over an active volcano. Humans had been members of the Galactic Council for approximately 70 standard cycles, barely a footnote in galactic history. They had arrived in their crude fusion drive ships, all enthusiasm and questionable safety protocols, and immediately proceeded to ignore approximately 60% of the established guidelines for responsible spacefaring. They colonized worlds other species had deemed too volatile. They ate foods that were classified as industrial solvents by 3 different civilizations. They kept creatures called cats as companions despite the animals' obvious contempt for their owners. But they had always seemed, if not entirely sensible, at least vaguely attached to survival. They wore spacesuits in vacuum. They avoided flying into stars. They demonstrated a basic understanding that certain actions led to certain consequences, namely death. This was different. Audio transmission incoming, announced the Althean technician. The human vessel is broadcasting on standard frequencies. The council chamber's audio system activated, and a voice filled the space. Human, male, and utterly, inexplicably cheerful. 7 hours to event horizon at current velocity. Gravitational gradient is starting to get interest. Shield harmonics are holding at 93%. Note to self, remember to recalibrate the forward sensors. They're getting a bit twitchy with all this spatial distortion. Oh, and if anyone's monitoring this frequency. Hello, beautiful day for science, isn't it? The transmission continued. The human apparently narrating his approach to certain doom with the casual tone of someone describing a pleasant afternoon stroll. The Vexnari Prime representative's crystalline body flickered through several colors that roughly translated to profound existential distress. Is this, she began slowly, is this what humans consider normal behavior? No one had an answer. They simply watched as the green marker on the display crept closer to the point of no return, accompanied by cheerful commentary about fascinating gravitational lensing effects and minor structural stress on the portside hull plate. For the first time in 6,000 cycles, the Galactic Council realized they might not understand the universe quite as well as they thought, because the universe apparently contained humans, and humans apparently looked at black holes and thought challenge accepted. The human vessel crossed the outer boundary of the ergosphere, the point where escape became difficult. The human's transmission continued, uninterrupted, now discussing something about confirming theoretical models and expressing mild disappointment that he'd forgotten to pack better snacks. They had 3 hours until the vessel reached the event horizon. 3 hours to understand what they were witnessing. 3 hours before physics, the universe, and everyone's comfortable understanding of reality would need some serious recalibration. Somewhere in the back of the chamber, a Borathian junior analyst muttered something that the universal translator rendered as "we're all going to need therapy after this." He wasn't wrong. The council chamber had transformed into something resembling a disaster response center. If disaster response centers were staffed by people who had never encountered disasters quite this aggressively voluntary. Holographic displays multiplied across every available surface, each one tracking different aspects of the human vessel's suicidal trajectory. Gravitational force readings, tidal stress calculations, radiation exposure levels that would have liquefied most known biological matter. And through it all, the human kept talking. Hour 6, minute 42. Experiencing some time dilation now, which is absolutely wild. My chronometer is disagreeing with itself by about 3 seconds, which technically means I'm living in multiple time frames simultaneously. Philosophy students would have a field day with this. Am I having this experience now, or 3 seconds ago, or both? Anyway, the hull temperature is up to 400 degrees Celsius, well within acceptable parameters. The cooling systems are working overtime, bless their mechanical heart. The Vexnari xenopsychology specialist had pulled up every available file on human biology and psychology, spreading the data across a dozen screens in increasingly frantic patterns. This makes no sense. Humans experience fear. We've documented it extensively. They have elevated cortisol production, increased heart rates, fight or flight responses. Their own literature is filled with cautionary tales about hubris and mortality. Perhaps the pilot is experiencing a psychological break, offered the Althean medical coordinator. Extreme stress can cause irrational behavior in carbon-based species. They pulled up the vessel's medical telemetry, another piece of data the monitoring station had helpfully provided. Heart rate, 72 beats per minute. Blood pressure, optimal. Stress hormones, baseline. Brain activity, elevated in regions associated with problem-solving, and inexplicably, enjoyment. He's having fun, whispered a Borathian cultural liaison, his massive frame somehow conveying the body language of someone who had just realized they were standing in a building with faulty foundations during an earthquake. By the void, he's actually enjoying this. The transmission continued. You know what's really interesting? The way the accretion disk appears to be rotating faster as I get closer. It's not, of course, that's just relativistic effects playing tricks on perception. Time's getting stretchy. If I had a twin back on Earth, I'd be aging slower than them right now. Unfortunately, I don't have a twin, just a brother who still owes me 50 credits from that bet about whether you could deep fry ice cream. Turns out you can. It's terrible, but you can do it. The Council had protocols for first contact situations. They had protocols for natural disaster. They had protocols for hostile encounters, diplomatic incidents, and that one very specific scenario involving a Hectarian mating ritual that had been mistaken for a declaration of war. They did not have protocols for watching a species member voluntarily test the absolute limits of physics while discussing fried desserts. A junior Vexnari analyst pulled up historical records, searching for parallel behavior in other species. The results were not encouraging. The Altheans had lost a research vessel to the Screaming Mouth 400 cycles ago. The crew had been in cryosleep when their navigation system failed, sparing them the terror of awareness. The Borathians had conducted exactly one black hole research mission, maintaining a safe distance of 7 light hours and using unmanned probes. 3 Hectarian ships had been consumed over the centuries, each one the result of catastrophic system failures and crews who had spent their final moments in what the recovered logs described as infinite regret and screaming. This human was humming. The audio feed picked up a melody, something rhythmic and oddly cheerful, floating through space alongside telemetry data that showed the vessel experiencing gravitational forces that should have compressed it into a dense sphere of exotic matter. The modifications are holding beautifully, the human continued, his tone suggesting pride in craftsmanship. Reinforced the structural integrity fields, added redundant power systems, and completely redesigned the shield harmonics to cycle at frequencies that should create a kind of buffer against the tidal forces. It's all theoretical, obviously. Well, was theoretical. Currently testing the hypothesis in what scientists call the finding out phase after a generous helping of the around and find out protocol. The Althean coordinator pulled up the vessel's technical specifications, which Earth had filed with the Council upon the ship's registration. It was listed as an experimental research craft. The modifications were documented, though the purposes had been described in vague terms like advanced field testing and extreme environment analysis. They told us, the coordinator said, their harmonic voice carrying a note of horrified realization. The humans filed this vessel for research purposes near high-gravity anomalies. We approved it. We thought they meant from a safe distance. Why would we assume otherwise? The Vexnari Prime representative's colors flickered through shades of distress. Every rational species conducts such research from a safe distance. We may need to reconsider our definition of rational, suggested the Borathian defense minister. The human vessel crossed another threshold, entering the region where light itself began to behave strangely, bending and warping around the gravitational well. The visual feed from the vessel's exterior cameras showed the universe compressing into a shrinking circle ahead,
while the accretion disk stretched into impossible spirals around them. "Oh, that's beautiful." The human breathed genuine awe in his voice. "The photon sphere. Light is literally orbiting the singularity here. I'm seeing light that's been circling this thing for who knows how long. Could be centuries old, just trapped in an endless loop. There's something poetic about that. Tragic, but poetic. 2 hours to the event horizon. The point of no return, where escape velocity exceeded light speed and the universe's fundamental rules became more like gentle suggestions that physics felt comfortable ignoring. And the human was accelerating, running final systems check before things get really interesting. Life support optimal, power generation, 107%, overperforming beautifully. Structural integrity, some minor stress fractures on the aft hull plating, but nothing critical. Shield systems, this is where it gets fun. The harmonics are creating a kind of bubble that's offsetting roughly 60% of the tidal forces. The math said it should work. Glad to see the math wasn't lying. In the council chamber, 47 species realized simultaneously that they had fundamentally misunderstood what made humans dangerous. It wasn't their weapons, primitive as they were. It wasn't their tendency toward territorial disputes or their occasional diplomatic bluntness. It was this absolute refusal to accept that some boundaries existed for good reasons. The human had looked at the universe's most fundamental rule, black holes destroy everything, and decided it was more of a suggestion. Approaching event horizon in 90 minutes, the human announced cheerfully, "Time to see if I'm brilliant or about to become a cautionary tale. Either way, the data's going to be fantastic."
The Galactic Council had witnessed the end of stars. They had observed supernovae from safe distances, documented the collapse of neutron stars, and maintained academic databases on stellar phenomena that could sterilize entire solar systems. They were comfortable with destruction on cosmic scales, provided it followed predictable patterns and happened to someone else. What they were watching now violated every principle of predictable patterns. 30 minutes to event horizon. The human's voice had taken on a quality that the universal translators struggled to interpret, somewhere between excitement and the kind of focus normally reserved for diffusing antimatter bombs. Gravitational time dilation is getting significant. My clocks are now disagreeing by 47 seconds. From my perspective, the universe outside is speeding up. From outside perspective, I'm slowing down. Relativity is weird and I love it. The Vexnari xenophysics team had constructed a model of what should be happening to the vessel. The holographic projection showed a ship-shaped object stretching like heated glass, molecular bonds snapping under tidal forces, the whole structure collapsing into a stream of component atoms before crossing the event horizon. It was graphic, thoroughly researched, and entirely theoretical because no one had ever survived long enough to provide experimental data. Educational material, the lead physicist explained, her crystalline structure flickering nervously, to help the council understand what we're about to witness. The tidal forces at this proximity create differential gravitational pull across the vessel's length. The front experiences significantly more force than the rear. This creates stress measured in his singing again, interrupted a Barothian observer, his tone suggesting a mind actively reconsidering fundamental truths about reality. Indeed, the audio feed carried a melody, some human musical form, that involved repetitive verses about celestial bodies and anatomically questionable activities involving planetary bodies. The lyrics were bizarre. The timing was impeccable. The fact that anyone could maintain musical rhythm while experiencing gravitational forces that should be converting their skeletal structure into exotic matter was frankly offensive to physics. 15 minutes. The view is absolutely unreal. The accretion disk looks like it's wrapped around my entire field of vision now. Brightness is incredible even through the filters. I'm effectively seeing the universe's most dangerous whirlpool from the inside. The data I'm collecting is going to revolutionize our understanding of extreme gravitational environments. Also, I think I just achieved a personal record for closest approach to certain doom without actually experiencing certain doom. The Althean Collective had mobilized their finest theoretical physicists, pulling experts from research stations across 3 sectors. They materialized in the chamber one by one, holographic forms pulsing with rapid calculation. Their consensus, reached after 9 minutes of collaborative processing that would have taken biological minds several weeks, was presented with the kind of certainty that preceded paradigm shifts. The shield modifications are creating a localized space-time bubble, the lead theorist announced. The harmonics aren't just deflecting tidal forces, they're generating a micro-region where the vessel exists slightly offset from normal space-time. It's functionally a miniature Alcubierre-style field, though the mathematic involved. The theorist paused, searching for appropriate terminology. Aggressive, dangerously innovative. The energy requirements alone should have vaporized the power core. Should have. The Vexnari Prime representative seized on the Human engineering apparently has a flexible relationship with should, the theorist replied. 5 minutes. The vessel had crossed into the region where light bent so severely that the universe appeared as a shrinking tunnel ahead and an expanding sphere behind. The human's exterior cameras showed phenomena that would require new terminology to describe properly. Space folding into itself, time becoming a visible dimension, reality showing its underlying mathematical structure in ways that typically required advanced sensor equipment and significant funding to observe. This is it. Event horizon in 3 minutes. I'm going to stop talking soon because even light takes its time getting out of here, and my transmission is going to get increasingly redshifted and time delayed. To anyone watching, and I really hope someone's watching because otherwise this is a huge waste of dramatic tension, the next bit happens fast from my perspective, and very, very slowly from yours. Basic relativity. The council chamber had fallen completely silent. 47 species watched their displays with the focused attention of people witnessing either history or catastrophe, possibly both simultaneously. 2 minutes. Shield harmonics are fluctuating but holding. Hull temperature is now high enough to melt titanium. Good thing the hull isn't made of titanium. Power core is running at 130%, which sounds dangerous but is actually within tolerable parameters if you're willing to redefine tolerable. The Barathian defense minister pulled up casualty projections, then closed them immediately. The numbers were not encouraging for anyone who preferred their atomic structures in their current configuration. 1 minute. I can see the singularity. Well, not see it obviously. You can't see something that traps light, but the absence is visible. It's like the universe has a hole punched through it and I'm looking at the hole. Everything my species has ever done, every bit of art and music and literature and scientific achievement, and we've never been this close to understanding what's on the other side of physical law. 30 seconds. The vessel's telemetry showed readings that made the monitoring equipment question its own accuracy. Energy signatures that oscillated between normal and impossible. Structural integrity readings that flickered between intact and non-existent. The human's medical data showing elevated heart rate finally, a normal fear response, but also elevated endorphins. The lunatic was still enjoying himself. 10 seconds. If this works, I'm naming the technique after my grandmother. She always said I'd either do something historic or something historically stupid. Turns out maybe both. 5 seconds. Shield bubble is the transmission cutoff. Not gradually, not with increasing time dilation creating infinite asymptotic delay. Just stopped as if someone had disconnected a cable. The council chamber erupted in overlapping transmissions, 47 species all attempting to process the same impossible observation simultaneously. The vessel had crossed the event horizon, the mathematical point of no return, the boundary where physics gave up pretending and just started making arbitrary rules about causality and information theory. Nothing came back from beyond an event horizon. That was fundamental. That was the rule that made black holes special, terrifying and worthy of maintaining safe distances measured in light years. The displays showed empty space where the vessel had been. The monitoring station's sensors detected nothing. The event horizon had swallowed the ship, the human and apparently all common sense about what constituted acceptable research protocols. It's over, the Vexnari Prime representative said quietly. He's gone, added to the casualty records. Another vessel lost to the Omega Void. The Althean coordinator began composing the incident report, a task they had performed 43 times over 6,000 cycles. Each report followed the same format. Vessel identification, cause of approach, estimated time of destruction,
relevant data for preventing future occurrence. They got as far as human vessel, registration number, before the monitoring station transmitted an alert that made every processing core in the chamber experience the digital equivalent of a heart attack. Contact re-established. The vessel was transmitting again, from the other side. Absolutely wild. Did you get that data? Please tell me someone recorded that, because I'm going to need corroboration when I publish these findings. The transit through the event horizon was okay. I don't have words for what that was. The instrumentation barely kept up, but I'm through. I'm on the other side of a black hole and my atoms are still arranged in the correct order. The shield bubble worked. Physics is amazing, and I may need to lie down for several hours after this. The council chamber had gone beyond silent into a realm where silence itself seemed inadequate. This was the quiet of people watching their understanding of reality pack its bags and leave without forwarding address, requesting coordinates for the next high-gravity anomaly. That was fascinating, and I have several modifications I want to test based on these results. The Borathian defense minister made a sound that the universal translator rendered as incoherent distress, but probably meant something more along the lines of, "We're all going to die, and it's going to be because we let humans have starships." He had a point. The emergency session convened at hour 27, cycle 9047, would later be referenced in galactic historical records as the day we realized we made a terrible mistake, letting humans leave their planet. The official council documentation used more diplomatic language, naturally, but the informal consensus was clear. Humanity had just demonstrated that the galaxy's most dangerous quality wasn't aggression or territorial ambition. It was curiosity backed by terrifyingly insufficient self-preservation instincts. The council chamber had never been designed to accommodate every member species simultaneously. The last time they had attempted full attendance was during the Hectarian naming crisis of cycle 8095-6, when that species had tried to claim linguistic ownership of 1,700 commonly used words. This situation warranted similar urgency, though for entirely different reasons that involved considerably more existential dread. The human vessel had emerged from the Omega Void's far side, instruments intact, pilot alive, and this was the part that made the Althean medical analysts question their understanding of biology. Experiencing what his bio-readings indicated was mild euphoria combined with slight fatigue. The same physiological state humans apparently achieved after a good workout or 3 cups of coffee. He had survived a black hole transit with the same biological impact as moderate exercise. The Vexnari delegation had spent 18 hours analyzing every microsecond of telemetry data. Their presentation to the full council involved 47 holographic charts, 300 pages of mathematical proofs, and a conclusion that could be summarized as, "It shouldn't have worked but it did, and we're terrified of the implication." The shield harmonics created a stable space-time bubble approximately 112 meters in diameter, the lead Vexnari physicist explained, her crystalline body flickering through colors that indicated profound discomfort with her own finding. This bubble effectively isolated the vessel from the most extreme tidal forces, while maintaining structural cohesion through the event horizon transit. The energy requirements were managed through a cascading power distribution system that should have failed catastrophically but instead operated at 137% efficiency. "Should have failed," repeated the Borathian ambassador, his massive frame somehow conveying the posture of someone expecting bad news to get worse. That phrase keeps appearing in our analysis. "Human engineering contains significant safety margins," added an Althean technical analyst. "What they rate as maximum capacity, most species would consider catastrophic overload. They build equipment expecting it to operate beyond specifications. This is either brilliant redundancy planning, or systematic disregard for manufacturer recommendations, possibly both." The Hectarian diplomatic corps representative, whose species had spent 4,000 cycles perfecting the art of verbose commentary, managed to summarize the situation with uncharacteristic brevity. "They drove through a black hole and lived. We need to discuss containment." The word hung in the chamber like a malfunctioning gravity generator, heavy, uncomfortable, and making everyone wish they were somewhere else. "Containment implies threat," countered the Althean coordinator carefully. "The human posed no danger to anyone except himself." This was research, not aggression. Research that violated 9 fundamental laws of physics, snapped the Vexnari Prime representative. Research that demonstrates capabilities we didn't know were possible. Research that suggests humans can go anywhere in the universe regardless of whether anywhere wants them there. A Borathian military strategist pulled up tactical projections. If humans can transit black holes, what else can they survive? Neutron star approaches, supernova shockwave, the interior of gas giants. We've spent 6,000 cycles assuming certain environmental conditions were universally lethal. That assumption appears to have been optimistic. The debate continued for 3 hours, cycling through increasingly desperate proposals. Quarantine humanity to their home system, impractical given they already had 70 established colonies. Restrict their access to advanced research. Violation of Council Charter and probably unenforceable given human tendency to ignore restrictions they found inconvenient. Diplomatic negotiations to establish behavioral guidelines. Laughable given humans had already demonstrated their relationship with guidelines, was casual at best. The Vexnari, xenopsychology specialist, finally offered a perspective that shifted the conversation's entire trajectory. We're approaching this incorrectly. We're treating humans as a problem requiring solution. Instead, consider them as a resource requiring allocation. The chamber fell quiet, 47 species processing this reframing with varying degrees of comprehension and horror. Explain, commanded the Althean coordinator. Humans possess a unique combination of traits: high risk tolerance, innovative problem solving under pressure, willingness to test theoretical limits through practical application. Most species find these traits alarming because we've evolved to avoid unnecessary danger. But there are scenarios where these traits become advantages. The Borathian defense minister caught the implication first. You're suggesting we weaponize them, not weaponize. The specialist projected a list of galactic problems that had remained unsolved for centuries. Hostile environment research, extreme condition resource extraction, first contact with dangerous phenomena. Each one represented a situation where conventional approaches had failed, due to reasonable species' reasonable reluctance to risk annihilation. Humans excel at situations where reasonable approaches fail. The logic was sound, even if the underlying premise made everyone profoundly uncomfortable. Humans didn't view lethal environments as barriers. They viewed them as interesting challenges that might yield valuable data. This mindset was either enlightened scientific courage or spectacular evolutionary oversight, but regardless, it provided capabilities no other species could match. Are we seriously considering officially endorsing human recklessness? Asked a Hectarian observer. We're considering officially channeling it, corrected the Vexnari specialist. Establish a human-led research division focused on extreme environment analysis. Provide funding, resources, and appropriate oversight. Let them investigate phenomena the rest of us are too sensible to approach directly. The proposal had merit. It had terrifying merit. It was the governmental equivalent of noticing someone juggling chainsaws and deciding to sponsor their performance, rather than trying to confiscate the chainsaw. The vote took 17 minutes and passed with 73% approval. The Human Extreme Environment Research Initiative would be established, funded, and granted special operational permissions that made the legal department collectively shudder. Humans would receive access to council resources for conducting research that other species deemed suicidal. In exchange, they would share their findings, and critically avoid testing their theories near inhabited systems without advance notification. The human pilot received official notification 6 hours later. His response was transmitted back to Nexus Prime and played for the full council, because apparently the universe had decided today was Infinite Irony Day. Oh, fantastic. I've already got a list of 12 other gravitational anomalies I want to investigate. There's a binary black hole system in Sector 7 that's doing this really interesting orbital decay thing. And don't even get me started on the naked singularity in the Horsehead Nebula. The theoretical implications alone are worth the trip. I'll need to make some modifications to the shield harmonics, maybe reinforce the hull plating, definitely upgrade the sensor. Can the Council provide specifications for advanced gravitational wave detector? The current equipment worked, but I want better resolution for the next run. Next run. He was already planning the next one. The Vexnari Prime representative's colors cycled through what could only be described as chromatic resignation. We've just officially sanctioned human insanity and provided them funding to pursue it systematically. We've adapted to a new reality, corrected the Althean coordinate. Humanity has demonstrated that our understanding of physical limits was incomplete. Rather than deny this or attempt futile restriction, we're incorporating their capabilities into our collective knowledge base. You're making it sound reasonable, complained a Borathian junior analyst. I'm making it sound inevitable, the coordinator replied. Humans exist. They're going to conduct this research regardless of our approval. At least this way we get the data and some illusion of supervision.
The word spread through galactic communication networks with the speed of particularly alarming gossip. Within a standard cycle, every spacefaring species knew the story. A human had driven through a black hole. The Council had responded by giving him resources to do it again. The galaxy's established hierarchy, ancient civilizations at the top, newer species deferring to accumulated wisdom, had developed an unexpected complication. Humans weren't aggressive conquerors or diplomatic manipulators. They were significantly worse. They were the species who looked at the universe's most fundamental dangers and said, "Hold my beverage, I'm going to science this thing." 2 cycles later, 3 separate diplomatic incidents were resolved when the opposing parties learned humans had been invited to mediate. Neither side wanted to appear unreasonable compared to the species that considered black hole research a fun weekend project. 4 cycles after that, a border dispute that had simmered for 600 years suddenly resolved itself when both parties realized humans might become interested in the resource-rich but lethally radioactive contested zone. Fear, it turned out, didn't require weapons or threats. It just required one species demonstrating that survival instincts were optional, laws of physics were negotiable, and certain doom was just another item on the research agenda. The Galactic Council had spent 6,000 cycles building a civilization based on reason, caution, and accumulated wisdom. Then humans showed up, smiled at a black hole, and accidentally became the galaxy's most effective deterrent force through nothing more than aggressively unhinged scientific curiosity. The universe, in its infinite wisdom and apparent sense of humor, had spent 13 billion years crafting rules. Humans had looked at those rules and decided they were really more like guidelines. And somehow, impossibly, terrifyingly, it was working. The Omega Void continued its endless consumption of matter and light, indifferent to the fact that something had passed through its event horizon and lived to request a repeat performance. Somewhere in the depths of space, a human pilot was already calculating trajectories for his next impossible journey, humming off-key melodies about celestial mechanics. And 47 species collectively realized that the most frightening thing in the galaxy wasn't what lurked in the dark between stars. It was what emerged from that darkness, grinning, asking if anyone had recorded the data because the findings were going to be absolutely fascinating. The Council had finally understood fear. They just hadn't expected it to arrive with a cheerful attitude, questionable safety protocols, and a peer-reviewed publication schedule.